And we are back. Welcome into Gridiron Icon. This week, got a lot to talk about in terms of particularly the NFL, although college football has had some really, really cool storylines in the last few weeks. We're going to focus mostly in on week 2 of the NFL, as we tend to do. What a big week, chock full of some really big storylines that we want to tackle here on this week's episode. Agree, disagree? Of course, follow us on Gridiron Icon, on Twitter at Icon Gridiron, and Instagram, Gridiron_Icon. Let us know what you think. But man, there was some great football played this week in the NFL. And we're starting to see some stars emerge. We're still taking a good, long, hard look, if you will, at these rookie quarterbacks, some of which are almost starting to get over the hump and borderline thrive, while others are really struggling, which is kind of what we predicted early on in the season for these guys. So let's take a deep dive and take a deep look. I want to start first with the Chicago game. It looks like quite possibly the Justin Fields era has begun. What a bad turn of events for Andy Dalton. I mean, here's a guy that, look, he's a good guy and he's limited, but he is an NFL starting quarterback. He has done some great things in his career, but now to get hit with an injury when you've literally got Bears fans, and we want to hear from you Bears fans, chanting Justin Fields' name at games to the point where even Fields has commented on it. What a bad turn of events for Andy Dalton. I mean, here's a guy that's done nothing but work hard, kept his nose clean, been a good teammate. But Nagy comes out after the game and says that if he's healthy, and folks, let's be honest, it's a big if, Andy Dalton's a starter. So this is going to be a story to follow here over the next few weeks. It's quite possible that the Justin Fields era has begun in Chicago. Didn't have a great showing when he came into the game with the Dalton injury. He was 6 of 13 for 60 yards and a pick. A very, very weak 27.7 quarterback rating. But come on now. He has been the backup. He gets thrown into a game. And despite all that, you can still see the talent. You could see that with a little bit of time, a little bit of experience, Justin Fields is going to be a stud in the NFL. I continue to say that I think he'll be the best quarterback out of this class, probably neck and neck with Mac Jones, who's also showing out as a starter in New England. But just focusing in again on Justin Fields, you could just see the athleticism with some time, with really getting nothing but the first team reps with Dalton maybe out of the way and his backup. You can see where Justin Fields is going to be a fantastic addition to Chicago, giving Bears fans a lot to be hopeful for in the future. And they really haven't gotten him all the tools he needs. The Bears do have Allen Robinson. They have Mooney. They have guys at the skill position, but he hasn't had the time yet. We're 2 games in. He gets thrust into the game with a Dalton injury, and it's going to be a very, very interesting storyline for us to follow over the next few weeks. Is Andy Dalton done in Chicago based on an injury? We've seen this before with rookie quarterbacks. We saw this just last year with Chargers. Tyrod Taylor goes in pre-game to get a shot. They puncture a lung. Here comes the Justin Herbert era. You get the feeling that almost might be history repeating itself here, that Justin Fields is going to begin his leadership role with the Chicago Bears. And might I add, it is time. It is time to get Justin Fields into this game. The fans want it. You can see the talent. You can see the skill. Let's go, Matt Nagy. Let's make it so. David Montgomery is showing out for the Bears, so you've got a lot to help Justin Fields with in the running game. Let's get him into the game. Let's turn this into the Justin Fields era. So stay tuned on that. The Bears do win. The defense played fantastic. It was a little rough seeing Joe Burrow throw that many interceptions on Sunday. I still think he's going to be a guy to watch as a future star in this league too. He just has the moxie. He's got the skills. But the Bears come out on top, and we got a big glimpse into Justin Fields. Stay tuned. At the time of this recording on Tuesday afternoon, the word is that there is no word on Andy Dalton and whether or not he's the starter going into next week. So stay tuned. We're looking forward to more time with Justin Fields. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Man, What a good game. A shootout in the desert. Just an absolute shootout. And Kyler Murray, again, who I personally think is starting to look like an early MVP candidate, just put up big numbers. He made some mistakes, but the Cardinals escaped with a win basically on another gaffe from the Minnesota Vikings and their special teams unit. Unbelievable. The Arizona Cardinals defense did not play real well. They got rolled. The Vikings had the game in the bag, and Joseph misses a 37-yard field goal that would have won the game and sent the Cardinals down to their first loss. But he misses the 37-yard chip shot, and the Cardinals go to 2-0. I mean, that NFC West is loaded, and the Cardinals on offense look explosive. We saw D-Hop. We saw A.J. Green get into the mix. We saw Chase Edmonds get into the mix. And Kyler Murray is just putting up insane numbers. 29 of 36 for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns this past Sunday. He did have 2 bad picks, but you kind of expect that out of a Kyler Murray type style offense. They spread the ball out a lot on Sunday. They got the wide receivers involved. As mentioned, it was great to see A.J. Green get into the act as a guy that finally was freed from Cincinnati and got into a high-flying offense. It is admittedly a little strange to see A.J. Green as a number 2 after all these years of being number 1. But he's number 2 to D-Hop, and he looks like the real deal. And my God, what an embarrassment of riches for Kyler Murray. He's got a running game. He's got all kinds of people at the receiver position. Christian Kirk with just pure speed. And then you saw a little bit out of the rookie, Rondale, on Sunday, who may be a big piece of that offense moving forward. But how the Vikings let that game slip away. God, if you're a Vikings fan, that hurts. That hurts. They played good football. Kirk Cousins looked really good on Sunday. For Kirk Cousins, we're not putting him in the upper tier of quarterbacks, but he looked good. And, of course, Dalvin Cook just looked dominant on the ground. He ran right through that Cardinal defense. But the Vikings let it get away from him, and it's a gut-wrencher. Just any kind of camera shot of Mike Zimmer at this point just makes you sick. The poor guy is coaching his guts out. And to have a kicker miss a 37-yard field goal after the offense got them in position late is just a killer. One of the top games on Sunday, though, I'll tell you what, if you like offensive football, both the Vikings and especially the Arizona Cardinals put up big, big numbers on Sunday. But the Cardinals snuck out of there with a W. And I tell you, it's starting to look like that NFC West is by far and away the best division in football at this point. All of them going into late in the afternoon on Sunday were undefeated. The Seahawks let one get away from them with the Tennessee Titans in overtime, and that Titans comeback was just unbelievable. Derrick Henry decided to be the king there in the second half and just ran away from that Seahawk defense. But when you're looking at that NFC West, whether it's the Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and even the 49ers getting out with a win on Sunday, that is one tough division in football. So stay tuned. More stories coming out of that. It really, really looks like the NFC West is, in fact, the toughest division in football, although there's several teams in the AFC that may want to argue with that. Let's stay with the NFC West on a quick shot and a quick look at the Los Angeles Rams and their game against the Indianapolis Colts. What do you say about Carson Wentz at this point? That guy is taking way too many hits for the quarterback position. He doesn't like to give up on plays. He's got that gunslinger mentality. You got to almost feel for the guy after what happened in Philly to see Nick Foles come in and lead them to a Super Bowl, having to pass a Nick Foles statue every day on his way in. He was probably thrilled to get out of there, as he's all but stated. He gets back with Frank Reich. The Colts have what appears to be a great offensive line, although they didn't seem to play that way on Sunday against the Rams. Of course, who does against Aaron Donald? But Carson Wentz just got the snot kicked out of him several times. He's taking way too many hits to be healthy for the whole season. And so he comes out of the game, and it's reported the next day that he's got not one ankle injury, which was on a hit by Aaron Donald, and it looked ugly. I actually thought it was the knee, but it was the ankle. But he has 2 ankle injuries. Both of his ankles now have severe sprains. And so stay tuned in Indianapolis. But Carson Wentz, you've got to admire the guy. He's out there giving it his all. He's down a wide receiver. You have to absolutely love what the guys are doing to play for him. The kid out of USC. But God, is he taking too many hits. And Aaron Donald and company got after him on Sunday. The Rams advanced to 2-0. Didn't have what I would say was their best offensive game, but they still looked very powerful, particularly that guy Cooper Kupp, number 10. Unbelievable game for him as he's clearly becoming the go-to guy for Matt Stafford. Didn't have the best offense, but still found a way to be able to beat the Colts, even on what many would consider would be a down day. Darrell Henderson gets hurt. Stay tuned on that, whether he's going to play next week against the Bucs, a rib injury. But he looked good. He looked good in the running game, and Sony Michel came in and looked good in mop-up duty to grind out that last few minutes on the clock. So the Rams were able to really put their talent on display. That roster, while not deep at some positions, is deep at others. Running back looks to be a strength right now. Certainly the receiver position with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And then they've got Deshaun Jackson, who wasn't even involved much on Sunday. The rookie Tutu Atwell. They're developing other rookies, and Jacob Harris, who's a hybrid tight end wide receiver type with lots of size. Stay tuned on that. But in that game, I thought it was very interesting to watch what many thought was Battle of the Titans along the line of scrimmage between Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson. And I'll tell you, Quentin Nelson, by most reviews, would say he held his own. He didn't take Donald on one-on-one on most occasions. There was a lot of double-team help from a Pro Bowl center on Aaron Donald. And still, folks, Aaron Donald, whether he was lined up on Quentin Nelson or he flipped sides in that defense to the other side, was able to get a lot of penetration, able to disrupt the offense just like he always does. It's absolutely unbelievable. Stats are that he had 9 pressures. He had 2 or 3 quarterback hits. The one injury that knocked Carson Wentz out of the game was, of course, courtesy of number 99. But aside from that, you can just see anywhere that Aaron Donald lines up, even against an offensive line with a couple of Pro Bowlers, he completely destroys an offensive game plan. And folks, Quentin Nelson is a stud. And again, he all but held his own on some of his matchups with Aaron Donald, but oftentimes he was getting help. That's incredible, absolutely incredible. And I really tip my hat to Quentin Nelson. He said post-game that it was an honor to go up against the greatest football player on the planet and in the league. And I just love that, man. I hope we get to see a lot more matchups between Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson. But I'll tell you what, folks, we are seeing something incredibly special with Aaron Donald. He's going up against the best players at their positions and still wreaking havoc on an offensive game plan. There were several plays that he had Carson Wentz wrapped up. This is week 2 now where he's got his hands on the quarterback and not gotten the sack, but his teammates come in on mop-up duty. Greg Gaines even got a sack as a defensive tackle this week for the Rams. So absolutely amazing to watch that. It was a matchup that if you weren't isolating it and watching it, I highly recommend. Brian Baldinger did a great breakdown post-game on some of his film work on Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson, as well as the rest of the Indianapolis Colts offensive line. In fact, one play in particular that was mind-blowing that not a lot of people picked up on, there was a few, was the interception that the linebacker got for the Rams. And if you watch the play and break it down on tape, it's due to Aaron Donald. He literally blew up the offensive line. He knocked the tight end, Doyle, which was the recipient or the supposed recipient of the shuffle pass from Wentz, completely off the route, and the ball was just tossed to the linebacker for the Rams. It's just unbelievable what that guy does in the middle of the defense, week in and week out. And then we won't even go into Jalen Ramsey because it's almost not fair to throw Jacob Eason in to try to bring the Colts back in that game. And man, Ramsey just baited him into an interception. So the Rams look very good. Again, it goes along well with the NFC West, what we stated about the Cardinals sneaking a game out. The Rams, by all intensive purposes, basically snuck a game out too. They played well. They didn't play great. And they've got one big matchup coming to Los Angeles this Sunday, which we will get to. But let's shift gears a little bit over to some of the AFC teams and what we saw this week. Big matchups. And we want to kind of focus in a little bit on some of the rookies. Man, you got to bleed for Zach Wilson. Poor Zach Wilson. You can see the talent there. You can see the gunslinger mentality. I'm not sure where he fits in what that offense was trying to do 2 games into the season. They looked like they really wanted to run the ball and dominate in the short passing game. And Zach was going for long bomb touchdowns, which was his MO at Brigham Young. And his arm is built for it. He certainly has the mobility and talent for it. But 4 interceptions. You got to feel for the kid. And in all honesty, is anybody shocked? He went up against the rookie quarterback wrecker in Bill Belichick. We picked this on another podcast and on some guest shows this past week, that anytime a rookie goes up against a Bill Belichick defense for the first time, it usually spells disaster. And it spelled disaster for Zach Wilson. 4 interceptions, 19 of 33, 210 yards, and 4 interceptions. Welcome to the NFL, Zach. Just absolutely brutal. But it's strange. You can see the talent there with Zach Wilson, and I really tend to lean into what Robert Salah is saying, that, hey, this is going to happen. He's 2 games. He's 8 quarters into his NFL career. Going up against the GOAT of coaches, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, is brutal and a tall order to ask any rookie to do. So hats off to Zach Wilson for surviving that epic disaster. It's going to be very interesting to see what he does as a follow-up this next week, because it just doesn't get really any easier for Zach Wilson. The running game looked pretty good. The offensive line looks like it's gelling. The defense, particularly that front 4, or you could even say the front 7 for the New York Jets, is starting to gel, and I think they're going to keep them in games as Zach learns to rein in his arm, rein in that going deep mentality, and they continue to work with them. I think the Jets still are building something. But man, was that brutal. 4 interceptions on Sunday. If you're a Jets fan, be patient. You've got to be patient. They're trying to build something there, and hats off to Zach Wilson. But again, kind of focusing in on the defense, they gave it their all. They sacked Mac Jones 3 times. They added 9 tackles for a loss. You can see that obviously from a cultural standpoint and from a coaching standpoint, Salah's a defensive guy. They got after Mac Jones. Mac Jones was not overly comfortable for most of that day, and you've got to tip your hat to that young defense, particularly that front lineup. So again, be patient in New York. You've got the Denver Broncos on Sunday, and I'll tell you what, Zach Wilson, it's not going to get easier. Vic Fangio has a real talent for mixing things up on defense. You've got Von Miller. We'll have to see what's going on with Chubb. You've got a really solid secondary in Denver. I'll tell you what, hoping that the New York Jets really put in a good plan for the running game on Sunday. It really helps Zach Wilson out. It's not going to get any easier, so stick with it, kid. It wasn't the easiest of games, but you'll learn from this, and I think that he still puts on display some of that talent, and you've got to really tip your hat to him for enduring a Bill Belichick beating like that on Sunday. You know, look into his cohort, the guy picked just before him in the draft is where we want to go next. Trevor Lawrence. Boy, I tell you, that looks rough. That looks rough in Jacksonville. he is really struggling. You can see that he's about a tick late. You can see why people, really the diehard scouts and NFL people, were a little wary of Lawrence and what his adjustment would be at the next level. Whether it's in high school or was at Clemson, he's used to throwing to wide open wide receivers, and they're blatantly open when he's releasing that ball. It's not about physical talent at this point with him. It seems to be more about mental, because he looks to be a tick late. He looks like the NFL speed and his ability to read that hasn't developed yet. He's still making some mistakes and used to throwing in gigantic windows he is not going to get, or very rarely get, in the NFL. 14 of 33, 118 yards. He did have a TD, but he had 2 interceptions. The interceptions continue, for a whopping 37 quarterback rating for the first pick in the draft. Not a great outing. You really want to see Urban Meyer do more with that running game to take some pressure off him. James Robinson was fed the ball a little bit more this past Sunday. Carlos Hyde almost not at all. And you're just seeing a lot of the pressure and a lot of the weight fall to Trevor Lawrence. Look, it's natural. He was picked first in the draft. It's going to come with pressure. The paycheck comes with pressure. But they've got to do more to help him out and develop him. He definitely looks like right now he's struggling with some of the mental aspects of the game. And he still hasn't faced some of the best defensive teams or defensive coordinators in the league. He hasn't faced a Belichick, a Fangio, and some of the many other guys that really bring it on defense. So you're hoping that in this early part of his career, 2 games in, he starts to put some of the mental aspect and the speed of the game. He hopes to get on top of that speed of the game. He's really not on top of it yet. You can see that on Sundays. So let's switch to a guy that absolutely crushed it on Sunday night, and that was Lamar Jackson. But even for that dominant effort out of Lamar and getting a massive win, hats off to the Ravens. What an incredible W for them to go in against the AFC champions and to get a W. You still get this almost uneasy feeling about Lamar Jackson as a passer. Is it me? I don't think so. I think you're going to hear that from the guys that go deep on film study with Lamar. And yeah, it's cliche, but folks, it's not as cliche as it should be a genuine concern. Lamar's numbers were not horrible per se. 18 to 26, 239 yards. He did have a touchdown pass, but again, he had 2 interceptions as a passer, and he had the fumbles the week before. So there does seem to be a turnover issue that has to be addressed for Lamar. But he makes up for it with his athleticism. There isn't a scarier quarterback with the ball in his hands and the threat to run than Lamar Jackson. He looked unbelievable when he was running the ball. 16 carries, 107 yards. He had 2 touchdowns as a runner. But here's where the questions begin. How long does that last? Now, you're going to get the naysayers who are going to say, look, Stacy, look, people, it's been lasting. He's won an MVP. He's competitive. He's getting to the playoffs. But folks, that talent level, strictly as a passer, still looks a little on the weak side. Not that he doesn't have the power. The accuracy seems to be the issue. And you have to wonder, at what point is that going to bite him again in this season? He didn't look like a great passer on Sunday night. He looked like a great athlete. Yep, I'm going to say it. And there has to be some concern with that. God, you can't help but root for him. Great kid, always balling. His team believes in him. He's scary. But you just get the feeling that at some point he's going to have to make that throw or those throws. And I don't know how comfortable anybody's going to be with that, despite the fact that he's a dual threat. It's really a legitimate question at this point, and you saw it in a shootout with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is more polished. Mahomes is an incredible athlete and did all he could to carry the team. Won't even get into Travis Kelce rumbling and crushing everybody on his way down the field. They did shut Tyreek Hill down for the most part, and Mahomes mixed it up. He moved it around. Edwards-Helaire did not have his best game. The fumble essentially cost them the game and gave the Ravens an opportunity to win the game. But just sticking mostly with Lamar Jackson, incredible performance. But folks, you do have to ask the question, where is he as a passer? Has it improved? Is it improving? He's got the wheels. He's got the skills. He's terrifying when he's in the open field. And you're starting to even see the Ravens build up with this. It's almost a stable of the who's who of backup running backs. Now, I mean, to see Devontae Freeman actually break off a nice run in purple was really strange to see. So they've got guys. You kind of wonder when Le'Veon Bell's going to get into the act out there. But it's a legitimate question. Not going to take anything away from the Ravens. And probably the feel-good moment of the entire weekend was the moment on the 4th and 1 call when Harbaugh is screaming out to Lamar Jackson, "Lamar, you want to go for this?" He gets the hell yes from Lamar, and he goes, "All right, let's do it." You got to love that, people. I mean, that was just an awesome feel-good moment. Probably watched the clip on that 10, 12 times now. And you've got to love a coach that believes in his quarterback. Absolutely tip my hat to Baltimore in what was a fantastic win by them. And you have to believe that these two teams are going to see each other again. The AFC's loaded, but there's a very good chance these two see each other again. If I'm a Kansas City fan, the offense is as good as any in the league. That's obvious, with the MVP at quarterback and a skill position players that are just ridiculous. But folks, that defense is an issue. That defense is a problem. The Honey Badger came up with 2 turnovers all by himself and is seemingly all over the field. But my God, that defense did not look good against the Ravens. And the Ravens really aren't what you would call multidimensional. I suppose you could argue it. Hollywood Brown had a good game when Lamar did pass the ball. Sammy Watkins was doing his best to spoil his ex-teammates' night. But, man, they really literally seemed to do almost anything they wanted, particularly running the ball. So if you're in Kansas City, you've got to be concerned, not only just with that loss, which happens, but you've got to be even more concerned about the defense. So a big week in the NFL. There are probably any number of games. The Cowboys won big. There's just any number of games that we could talk about. Those were some of the highlights as we came out of week 2 and we start preparing for week 3. Want to shift gears here and take a look at this week's matchups. We have got some big matchups coming this week, starting with Thursday night, the Carolina game, moving right into Sunday, where I think we've got a couple of the biggest games that we've had so far this season in terms of talent on talent. I want to start with, I know I'm biased, I'm going to start with my Los Angeles Rams versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is going to be a game, a matchup of Tom Brady versus Matt Stafford. And I believe, though I didn't research it deep enough, that this is one of the first times Tom Brady's played in Los Angeles, if possibly the first time he's ever played in Los Angeles. Under the lights, in Hollywood, so to speak. What a matchup. Brady versus Stafford in what is sure to be the game of the week. The Super Bowl champions versus the NFC West upstarts, and the Rams look up to the task on defense. This is going to be as good a matchup as you're ever going to see. And I think for the most part, you're probably talking about Tampa Bay's offense, which has just been rolling people, particularly the passing game. I mean, Rob Gronkowski looks like he's 23 again. Caught another couple of touchdowns from Tom Brady as they're breaking all kinds of records now. But my God, they've got an embarrassment of riches in Mike Evans, in Godwin, the tight end position, the running backs. Tom Brady has got to probably have been circling this date on his calendar at SoFi since the schedule came out. And you can bet the Rams have. You can bet Aaron Donald has, as he is going to be seeking and destroying everything in his path against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do we expect to see? I think it's going to come down in a great deal to Raheem Morris and what he does on that defense. That defense definitely starting to look more like a bend, don't break type defense. There were open running lanes this past week for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, granted, the Colts tend to have a pretty talented offensive line, at least up the middle of the offensive line. And the Rams defense struggled a little bit with the running game. So what has Raheem Morris got in store for Tom Brady? Is he going to go strictly with a cover two? Is he going to mix it up? What's he going to do with Jalen Ramsey? I think potentially this could be a big, big game for number 5, Jalen Ramsey. I think they're going to move him around. And I think Raheem Morris is going to get very creative in the looks that he gives Tom Brady. Look, Tom Brady has seen just about everything after 22 years and 7 Super Bowl wins. He's seen just about everything. So Morris is going to have to come up with something that slows down that offense enough to give Matt Stafford and the Rams offense the opportunity to outscore Brady. Now, the Rams beat Brady last year with the Brandon Staley defense. So it's possible. And I think you're going to see some really, really creative stuff. Blitzes, a lot of man out of Raheem Morris. But my God, what a matchup. What a matchup. Morris versus Byron Leftwich. Aaron Donald versus Tom Brady. Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey versus Tom Brady. This is going to be a fantastic game. Battle of the Titans on Sunday. This is what I'm going to say. I'm going to make a bold prediction that's going to surprise no one. I think the Rams are going to win. And I think this will be the Buccaneers' first loss of the season. I think the Rams defense is going to come to play. And I think we are looking at a 31-24 game, Los Angeles Rams. They get a massive victory in SoFi. And Tom Brady takes his first defeat. And guess what, folks? I think these two teams meet again down the line. So big game coming on Sunday. Can't wait to break that down. The other game that I'm circling for this week is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs just took one on the chin, big loss to the Ravens. And the Chargers also took one on the chin, big loss to the Dallas Cowboys. So this is two teams that want to get back in the W column. And I am really curious to see Mahomes versus Justin Herbert. You remember the offseason at a golfing event that somebody shot something out to Mahomes when he was walking by, and he basically had a "we'll see" about Justin Herbert type attitude. Of course, he clarified, "Come on, people, you're just tossing that out at me as I'm walking up a fairway." But I'm looking forward to this matchup. And the reason I say that is Mahomes is going to get his. I think the Chargers defense, I expect it to be a little better at this point, particularly up front with the pass rush than it has shown to date. So we know Mahomes is going to get his, even with the solid secondary and the Brandon Staley defense. But here's where I think it gets interesting, and that's Justin Herbert and those receivers and Austin Eckler versus what I think is a really weak Chiefs defense. This is going to be another shootout. That's my prediction. I think this is going to be another shootout. Unfortunately for the Chargers, I'm going to predict it right now. I think that the Chiefs will find a way to win this. But I would not be surprised if the Chargers stage an upset. I think that Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, I think that these guys could really prove to be a problem for that Kansas City defense. Don't be surprised if Herbert pulls a real upset here. I think it's going to be one of those that's a little closer than people think, with the Chiefs edging, but again, not shocked if it's the Chargers. I'm going to say 28-24 on Sunday. But man, those are two games that I have had circled. I cannot wait to see Brady versus Stafford. I cannot wait to see Herbert versus Mahomes. And once again, here we are. In the NFL, it comes down to, do you have a quarterback and what's the matchup? A couple of quick pick'ems. Packers versus Niners is interesting. Niners, again, getting hit by injuries, particularly at the running back position. Trey Lance got almost no time actually on Sunday. Does he get into the game against a Packers defense that I thought struggled, particularly the defensive backs? I thought Jared Goff was lighting him up a little bit on Monday night. Then Goff kind of fell into his own turnover problem, and then the Lions defense can't stop anything. Other than that, I thought the Lions looked pretty good against that Packer defense, particularly the corners. So what will Shanahan have in store for the Packer defense? Is Aaron Rodgers going to light up the Niner defense? Really good, interesting matchup. I've got the Packers edging the Niners on this one, and I think it's going to be close, 21-17. I think it's going to be a little bit of a sloppy game in that one. The other one that's got my interest, and I'm going to do a quick pick 'em, is the Washington football team versus the Bills. The Bills really haven't hit their stride. Josh Allen actually made some mistakes. The Washington football team's in the same boat. They got a huge win out of Taylor Heineke. What does the Bills defense have in store for him? What does the Washington team have in store for Josh Allen? I think this is going to be a snot-nosed, punch-him-in-the-mouth game. And I've got this one, 17-14. I think the Bills will edge Washington in that game. So quick review of week 2. Really had some fantastic games on Sunday. Looking forward to the big ones this upcoming week. Tell us what you think. We're going to review it each week in between the weeks where we have guest interviews. We've got some fantastic folks coming on the show. We've got some great ones in store in the very near future. We will clue you into that. But give us your opinion. Talk to us on Twitter, Icon Gridiron, on Instagram at Gridiron_Icon. We want to get your opinion on what our takes are. We think they're good takes. You may not. Let's argue about it. Thanks for joining us this week, folks, and we will see you next week on Gridiron Icon.